Hello, this is your host. Today's episode of How Myths Reflect the Human Psyche is going to be another mythology myth mashup. We are going to be looking at the motif of a hero who goes into the underworld and brings someone back out. But this time we're going to be looking at three different myths from three different cultures and seeing how they compare and contrast and what insights they can give us into the human psyche. Now, the first myth that we're going to look at comes from Norse mythology. All three heroes go to the realm of the dead to retrieve someone from there. They all face trials or tasks that test their ability, strength, intelligence, resourcefulness. Well, the tasks serve several purposes. Humans, throughout history, have always feared death, and they've always wanted to know what lies beyond death, what happens after we die. First of all, in Norse mythology, there is a clear distinction between good and evil, between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. In Norse mythology, Hermod is a warrior, and his strength and his courage are what allow him to succeed in his quest. In Greek mythology, Orpheus is an artist, and it is his music and his creativity that allow him to succeed in his quest. They are stories of heroes who go in search of something or someone that they desire, and they bring back with them knowledge that helps us to understand ourselves better. They are stories that help us to make sense of the world around us and the place that we have in it. And they are stories that continue to resonate with us today, because they speak to the deepest yearnings of the human heart. In Celtic mythology, Gwen is a woman, and it is her determination and her love that allow her to succeed in her quest. Hel is the goddess of winter, of death of the underworld. In Norse mythology, Hermod is successful in his quest and his brothers return to him. This reflects the human psyche's desire for hope, the hope that even in death, there is a chance for resurrection, that even in the darkest of times, there is a chance for light to return. In Greek mythology, Orpheus fails in his quest and Eurydice is lost to him forever. This reflects the human psyche's acceptance of fate, the acceptance that sometimes things just don't work out the way that we want them to, that sometimes we have to accept the things that we cannot change. In Celtic mythology, Gwen is successful in her quest, but only because she is willing to sacrifice herself for her lover. And although the lovers eventually escape together, they are forced to flee separately in the end. This reflects the human psyche's understanding that even in love, there must be balance, that even in the greatest of loves, there must be room for other people and other things. And her realm is dangerous and scary and difficult to navigate. In Greek mythology, however, the situation is more complicated. Orpheus is a musician, and he uses his music to move even the gods. His music is so powerful that it can break the hearts of the gods, as well as the hearts of mortals. And so, in Greek mythology, the distinction between good and evil is not so clear, and the realm of the dead is not necessarily seen as a scary and terrible place, but rather as a place of great power and beauty. In Celtic mythology, the distinction between good and evil is even more blurred. The otherworld is not a place of death, but rather a place of magic and enchantment. It is a place where the old gods still live, and it is a place where the Green Knight lives. And the Green Knight is a symbol of nature, of the natural world, and he is not necessarily seen as good or evil. He is just a part of the natural order of things. And so, in these myths, we have these brave heroes who go down into the underworld, who approach the realm of death. And they bring back information, they bring back stories, they bring back experiences that help the humans who are still alive to understand their own mortality. They serve to separate the hero from the rest of humanity, to show that this hero is different from other people, that he is special. In all three of these myths, the heroes are tempted by the possibility of having what they desire, but they are also warned that this desire could lead to their downfall. In Orpheus' story, he is tempted by the possibility of being reunited with his beloved Eurydice, but he is warned that if he looks back at her, she will be taken away from him forever. In Hermod's story, he is tempted by the possibility of rescuing his brother, but he is warned that if he fails the tasks, his brother will be lost to him forever. And in Gwen's story, she is tempted by the possibility of reuniting with her lover, but she is warned that if she does not follow the rules of the otherworld, she and her lover will be trapped there forever. And so, these myths teach us that balance is necessary. They teach us that we must be careful not to let our desires for what we want to get overcome our sense of what is right and proper. He is the one who has been chosen to do this thing that no one else can do. The tasks also force the hero to grow in some way, to become more capable and more skilled. And in some cases, the tasks serve to show the power and the strength of the god that the hero is trying to persuade. And that is what we see in Hermod's story. Hel says to Hermod, "If you want your brother back, you must do these three tasks for me. And in doing these tasks, you will show my strength and my power." And this is also something that we see in the Celtic tradition. When Gwen goes to the otherworld to rescue the Green Knight, she doesn't have to do anything. But when she returns home, she tells her father that she is going to go back to the otherworld to get the Green Knight. And her father says to her, "Oh, you can't do that. That is madness. You don't understand what you're getting into." And she says to him, "No, I do understand what I'm getting into. And I know that the Lord of the otherworld wants to prove his power and strength to me, just as Hel wanted to prove her power and strength to him." And sometimes they're self-controlled like Orpheus, and all three of them succeed in their quest. But we also have some differences between these three stories. The second one comes from Greek mythology, and the third one comes from Celtic mythology. and he doesn't succeed in doing any of those things. He fails all of them except the last one. And hell gives him the option to do these tasks. But then she says to him, if you fail, your brother stays with me forever. Whereas in Orpheus's story, Eurydice is already in hell. He's not given an option to do tasks. It's simply said that if he can refrain from looking back at her, then she will come back with him. So that is more of a test of self-control than it is a test of physical or mental ability. And then in Gwen's story, there are no tasks at all. She simply goes to the other. She meets with the Lord of the Otherworld, and she strikes up a deal with him that if she can find the Green Knight, then he will allow her to take him back with her. And so, this story doesn't involve any kind of task. It's really just a test of bravery and determination and love. Now, when Orpheus descended into hell, he played such beautiful music that even Hades himself was moved by it. She successfully rescues him, but only because she is willing to sacrifice herself for him. And although the lovers eventually escape together, they are forced to flee separately in the end. And he allowed Orpheus to take Eurydice back with him, if he could just refrain from looking back at her, until they had reached the realm of the living. But Orpheus could not resist the temptation, and he turned back to look at Eurydice, and as soon as he did, she vanished from his sight forever. So, in Norse mythology, we have the story of a man named Hermod who travels to Hell, which is the realm of the goddess Hel, and his goal in going there is to try and persuade her to release his brother, who had died. He rides his horse to the land of the dead, where he meets with the goddess Hel. He asks her to release his brother, but she refuses unless he can do 3 tasks for her. In order to earn his brother's freedom, he agrees to these tasks, but all of them except the last one are impossible to complete. Nevertheless, Hermod attempts them all. He fails the first 2 but succeeds in the last one. Hel then releases his brother and allows him to return to the land of the living. In the second myth, which comes from Greek mythology, we have the story of Orpheus, the great musician, who travels to the underworld to retrieve his beloved Eurydice. And now in the third myth, which comes from Celtic mythology, we have the story of the woman named Gwen who travels to the other world to rescue her lover, the Green Knight. So let's begin by talking about some of the common elements between these 3 stories. In Hermit's story, he has to do 3 tasks, and they're pretty much impossible tasks, like wrestling with snakes and leaping over a wall, things like that. So why are the tasks necessary? And we'll talk about the differences between these 3 stories in a moment, but why are tasks necessary in the first place? And what we're really seeing here is a reflection of the human psyche's need to understand its own mortality, to understand life and death. But there is another reason why these tasks are necessary, and that is because they reflect the human psyche's need for balance, for moderation. So, now let's talk about some of the differences between these 3 stories. Another difference between these 3 stories is the role of the hero. And finally, let's talk about the ending of each of these stories. These myths are all about journeys, both physical and psychological journeys.